I've been looking around briefly. I haven't done too much digging just yet. This is just a surface level look, and I realized something very interesting. When I look at Xbox's map in terms of its studios, I realize that many of those studios that they've basically fostered before their acquisition of Bethesda and even Activision have maintained their standing. I don't see any of them closed or any of them facing, serious jeopardy. Now you have to wonder that these particular studios have all been here making games, and Xbox, their console sales have been all over the place, basically lower than PlayStation. And the Xbox One generation, they really got annihilated, in my opinion. I mean, and from a metric standpoint, and even from Phil Spencer's words, we lost the console generation. Phil Spencer, 2023, where he said there's no world where Starfield comes out and is an 11 out of 10 and people start selling their PlayStations to buy an Xbox. Phil listens to all of you. He reads, I'm sure he reads and sees the way gamers are reacting to all these things. So he knows. I mean, even some of you, the PlayStation players, you come out here and say, well, Xbox hasn't brought out anything that's, convincing to me. It's not that. Many times Xbox probably brings out stuff and you're like, I don't like it and I'm not going to give them money for it. You do the same thing. You're basically going to go ahead and do stuff like that. So again, it's not, no one is forcing you, but again, we're aware that you're not going to make that move because of what Xbox is doing at the moment until you find out that PlayStation cannot give you the same as time goes on. Eventually, that's going to dawn on many people. Don't worry. That's a whole different conversation. However, when they acquired Bethesda and when they acquired Activision, there were closures. And also, there were a lot of layoffs everywhere. The crazy thing, though, that you notice is these Xbox studios that were making these games, many of them were either acquired around the Xbox One ecosystem. Some have been in the Xbox ecosystem for a long time. But the way they stayed open, I think, was because Xbox had a take no L's approach to their software. Let me give you an example. Say, for instance, Concord and the game, Redfall. These two games, they led to studio closures instantly. Like the moment they just did not do well, they led to the studios basically getting closed down. In the case of Hi-Fi Rush, I heard that it was more like a culture thing. And Xbox did not want to deal with having to, basically reculture that studio because of a few things here and there. But they went ahead and divested that studio to another developer. And again, when you look at that studio's numbers, you'll realize that their games, The Evil Within and the other games that they had made over 13 years of them being owned by Bethesda, were not necessarily, in my opinion, a point where they could be sustainable. However, when you look at Xbox's own game studios, even with Xbox not selling a lot of consoles, these studios were still able to sell games and stay profitable. How were they able to do it? They did it with that zero-sum game where, as Phil Spencer realized that the market was shifting and changing, he made a pivot to day and date on PC. At that time, Steam was not as saturated and the gaming industry was not as saturated as it is now. Let's take a look at 2016 and how many games launched on Steam. There were 4,661. We can probably take that number and shave off like 150 to 200 and say those were the majority of the games that launched on console at the time. So Xbox game studios started to put their games on PC, or at least design their games with the targets to sell on PC. And it paid off. All we have to do is go back and look at Steam's data set and see if these games made their way into the top 100 games of 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, and 24. And the answer is many of them did. And in the top 100 category, they were doing so even as more games, 2018, 2019, 2018 and 2019 was weird. Less games came out in 2019. And interesting. But 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, and 24, and you'll see a good number of Xbox games from these studios make their way in there. At the same time, Xbox was building a Game Pass ecosystem that will bring in revenue and also expand their ecosystem to reach more people wherever they are, and also provide a benefit that supplemented their revenue within the Xbox ecosystem. At this point in time, I don't think they were looking at the potential of even going to PlayStation. It didn't make any, to me, I don't see it. I don't think it made any sense at that time. Even though maybe Phil may have thought about it because he needed to save this, sinking ship, because if they relied on their Xbox console alone, they would have been done. They'd have been dirt. So he made this move and it paid off. Now, we've seen this particular interview with Destin. A lot of people have been asking me questions saying, what do I think about Xbox going to other platforms and so on and so forth. And I'm the kind of person who I strongly believe that if you test out something and it works out for you, that you probably need to keep on doing it, because when people's lives depend on you, you really have to ensure that these guys can actually eat. These guys and gals that are in your studios, that they can eat, that they can basically be profitable, that they can stay in job security in a very changing, evolving market that basically eats developers and eats people who work in games industry. Very interesting position and interesting point here. Thomas Mahler, the creative director of Moonlight Studios and CEO, put a little tweet where he basically quoted Shinobi's little clip of Destin's interview about walled gardens. This is the video that some of you have been talking and saying, can you talk about this? And yes, here I am. But I wanted to go ahead and give you some data outlook first. He said, I know some people always want me to join the console warring, but I strongly believe that Xbox or Phil Spencer has the right approach. Well, I know he has the right approach because the approach actually worked out for him. Don't worry about the gaslighting coming from all these so-called PlayStation talking heads or all these so-called detractors. Many of them are not looking at it from the broader perspective. And I also understand, because somebody has said, the fear that some Xbox players have is that the Xbox console is going to no longer have as much value. That is not true. That console is at the center of everything. And many times it's been stated, but I think you're more concerned about what the external voices are saying compared to what is the reality that you are experiencing. As a publisher in Xbox's category, you need your own hardware. Even Steam is trying to get hardware. Why will Xbox abandon hardware? Like, Steam is coming back again to hardware. Why? What incentive does Xbox have to abandon hardware? This is where my question is for a lot of people who continue to express this, in quotes, concern or fear. You're being led astray is what it is. That's my opinion. He said, we decided a few years back not to make the Wicked game under Microsoft because back then we couldn't have shipped it for PlayStation. We decided not to make Wicked under Microsoft. We couldn't have shipped it for PlayStation and Switch. And since we knew how important multiplayer and crossplay would be, we decided to partner with Take-Two instead. In my emails to Phil over the years, I always brought up how crazy it would have been if we could have only watched certain DVDs on Sony players, while for others, you would have needed a Samsung player, etc. I think we can all agree that this would have been nutty for films. So why are games any different? Xbox Series X and PS5 basically contain the same hardware nowadays. So porting from one platform to another isn't that big of a deal anymore. Their controllers are mostly the same. The Steam boxes will also be the same. Not supporting all these devices makes no sense since you just cut out a huge chunk of your potential audience. This is what Phil Spencer is going for. He's going for a new audience, a zero-sum game where these studios that I just showed you at the beginning of this video are going to remain sustainable and not face the dire challenges that the market can bring. It takes a leader to make hard decisions that may be unpopular, but will yield benefits for everyone, even those who may be kicking and screaming to get dragged into their enjoyment. Even when the cohorts outside continue and constantly make berating statements, continue to throw shade, continue to throw arrows of unwanted and unwarranted claims, this man is basically sitting here making the changes needed that, honestly, on the other side, they're not willing to come out and actually make those changes. But they'll sacrifice anybody that will stand in the way of their profits and their gains I mean, not saying that Xbox won't do, or Microsoft won't do the same. I mean, obviously they did that with, Arcane and such. But how do you minimize that? So Mahler keeps writing. He says, consoles have been stuck attracting the same 100 to 150 million players for over 2 decades now. If we want to see the industry grow, it needs to be easier for everyone to access the content. Right now, the price for entry is still too high, with people needing to buy a $500 box just to get their game on. You'd ultimately want everyone with a screen and a controller to be able to play all games in order to finally break through the barrier and make games available to everyone. I'd be surprised if Sony would end up with the same strategy. You need not be surprised. You can already tell that they are gearing up for the same strategy. In fact, they're testing it out on multiple fronts. They're selling licenses so these games can be ported to PC and Xbox. They're already doing it. I saw some people in my comment section saying, is Marvel Spider-Man going to come to Xbox? Some people saying never. And I'm laughing going, you do know they can basically sell that license to Marvel Games to publish on another platform easily, right? Just the way they did with MLB The Show. Just the way they did with with Death Stranding. Just the way they did with Predator Hunting Grounds. It's called their license to port, where they just basically pretend like it's not us, it's somebody else, but they basically are going to be earning revenue from it. Don't ever say ever. Never say never. And he said, and yes, Nintendo will keep doing their own thing because Nintendo is Nintendo, and that's okay. Rooting for one huge corporation to sell more boxes over another strikes me as fantastically senseless, because we should all just share in the love for games. That's his own conclusion. Me, it's senseless to me because the gamers in those boxes are not playing these other games that surround them. Their attention is basically sucked in by a handful of games that I'm going to tag, according to Mr. Matt Piscatella, same old. For Xbox, it's a zero-sum game. Same old is a market pressure. Saturation is a market pressure. Competition is a market pressure. Other third-party developers are a market pressure. So what is he going to do? He's going to ensure that these guys, their games always sell. They'll put it on Game Pass. They'll get subscription revenue, number one. So walk with me through the process so that you're not confused. They'll get subscription revenue, and they'll also get sales revenue because some people would buy on this platform as well. That's both on the console and on their Xbox ecosystem on PC. Then they'll move on to Steam, where they'll also get sales revenue as well. And then, if the game is looking like, well, we're good here, the game will basically sit there, like Starfield is. Many of you have not wondered why Starfield, even though there are rumors, why do you think Starfield is just still sitting there? Well, I showed you the data, didn't I? 2023, it was in the platinum for games that brought in the most revenue, basically the year's top grossing revenue games. The game has made its money and its profits just here alone. Not to talk about what it had also gone to accomplish on here, on the Xbox platform, and on revenue as well. So game is fine. Indiana Jones, on the other hand, it doesn't have that luxury yet. So guess what? They already assessed the market. It's going straight to PlayStation. Outer Worlds, not really a big name, going straight to PlayStation. Doom, big name, always been a big name, already has an audience ready to go, straight day one to PlayStation. Ninja Gaiden, a game that everybody kind of knows about and loves, straight day one to PC. Avowed, we don't have to PlayStation. Avowed, we don't have a PlayStation date. So can that game maintain an Xbox audience and a PC audience? I think it can. Why? It's an RPG. They know their market. And I've been watching these particular developers and how they run and how they operate. They have some confidence that this game is going to do just enough and just right in terms of making its money back. Now, if it doesn't, well, it goes straight to PlayStation. It's a zero-sum game. Phil Spencer is not here to lose anymore, guys. Not a single game under his watch that I can see from this strategy of his is going to allow for a loss in revenue or a jeopardy of studio because of some silly hubris. And that's it. Now, if you're in the Xbox ecosystem and you're not fond of that, well, maybe go to PlayStation. Maybe their ship may be better, or maybe stay exclusive to Nintendo because that's what you want. You want a Nintendo-based ecosystem, but you want the games that Xbox and Microsoft are making. Xbox and PlayStation are making. So maybe you buy the 3, buy all boxes. I don't know. But then see the absurdity in buying all boxes. And if you have all boxes, check the dust on all the boxes that you bought and find out that you're only playing on basically one of those boxes. It is what it is. Thanks for watching the video. Talk to me in the comment section. Appreciate you guys' time and audience. And hopefully we'll talk pretty soon in another one. Peace out.